With the right data, you can make better decisions. And until we get out of our own ways as an industry and move beyond the core system into a data-focused approach to, enhancing customer experience, to make the agents' lives better, make the underwriters' lives better, make better risk decisions.
Welcome to the Elevating Leaders series, where we go beyond the headlines and straight to the people who are redefining InsureTech and business transformation. We've caught up with the visionaries and the pioneers that are currently driving the industry forward, bringing you exclusive insights, strategies, and stories you won't hear anywhere else. If you're ready to go deeper, this is your front row seat to the future of insurance. I'm Miguel Edwards, and this is 5 Minutes.
Josh, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy ITC schedule to be with us here at the 5M studio, man. I really appreciate you.
I tell you what, man, I'm excited to be here. ITC is it's our Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And between insurance and technology, and it's just so much fun. And lack of sleep, great conversations though. Seeing where the industry's going, it's so much fun.
Amen. So what are you seeing out there that's exciting?
This year, probably more than any other year, there's so much emphasis and focus and talk on artificial intelligence.
Of course.
I think the thing that some of the vendors miss on AI is what are the outcomes they're driving? So I'm hearing a lot of talk about AI, but I don't necessarily hear about the outcomes always. I think there's huge potential with AI.
Yeah.
Customer interactions as an example, right? Yeah. How do you talk to someone and how do you leverage AI to make sure that you're communicating effectively with your customers or to help agents? But I think AI is out there, and then customer experience just as a whole. Right. There's a huge emphasis on it. And I think a lot of times these people that are in Western North Carolina with Helene, some firsthand experience, what can we do to make their lives better?
Right.
Because they can't necessarily pick up their phone and do a digital first notice of loss right now, right?
That's right.
How can we help them with AI and that human interaction to get them whole again?
Yeah.
So those are the two big things that I'm seeing right now. Just, how do we use AI? How do we use it responsibly? And then that customer interactivity, right? How are you there for people?
Mm-hmm. I love that. One of the things, Josh, that I was kind of excited to talk to you about because I'm a little worried that AI has come in. It's here. It's amazing.
It is here.
It is, and it's amazing and it's powerful. But what I feel like has happened is that it overshadowed another component of emerging technology that I think is going to be essential to fully leverage AI. And here's what I mean. A couple of years ago, I started tracking the whole concept of no and low code applications. And I'm like, this is it, man. We have arrived. Because now as an industry we can finally start shedding legacy. We can start bringing the business together to co-create with technology. We bring the business tighter into that type of innovation. I was real excited about that. I'm still excited about it, but now I'm worried that AI come in, it's the new shiny object, it's overshadowing that.
For sure.
And is that going to slow our ability to adopt AI? Because we still haven't, to your point about customer experience, we really haven't fully addressed that yet.
No. If I try to look at it in a vacuum, and I never really thought about how AI could, upset the balance of no-code, low-code solutions, but I think you're exactly right. So knee-jerk reaction to that is it possible? Yes. And I think what it's doing, though, is, you see these big technology projects, right? Implementing a new core system, it takes a lot of technologists to do it.
Right.
The excitement around no-code, low-code, being able to bring the business users forward to help make the decisions, to stop the rework.
Yep.
Because an IT person who may not fully understand an underwriting process has created some code that stopped the flow. Getting that business user out there with no-code, low-code is so important. But you really need sometimes the technologist again to go back to the AI.
That's right.
So it feels like they skipped the generation of technology leading projects to business leading projects, and now technology leading projects again. Right. And I think the trick, and you talk about it all the time, right, Miguel? How do you operationalize data? How do you take data and make better decisions? But how do you empower the business users to help do that, right? So it's certainly an exciting time, but I do think that you bring up a really interesting point. And I hadn't really considered before, but that's just maybe one of those areas that maybe we can we can really take that AI technology and build it into the no-code, low-code solution so the business users can start to drive projects a little bit faster and better.
There you go. Well, with that said, Josh, why don't you talk a little bit about your product and kind of how that fits into the overall ecosystem and the innovation that's so necessary?
Yeah. So what's really interesting, we're trying to help carriers operationalize data, right? So our platform really delivers a better agent experience and policyholder experience. But what does that really mean? So the insurance industry burdened by regulation and compliance and underwriting rules, and it's all necessary, right?
Yeah.
To protect the carriers, protect the customers, protect the agents. But I'm seeing data like from Celent, as an example, comes out and says, 76% of people that come into the insurance business leave because it's too hard. And it's hard because we've got these stodgy old systems.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is solve that problem. And I talk to carriers all the time. Like, I ask them the question, when agents think of the carrier that's the easiest to do business with, are you at the top of the list?
Right.
And I usually get this response. Because they know they're not, right? They know there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
And the same thing on the policyholder side, right? Like, how can you provide empathy, whether it's through a mobile device, through a texting, AI, whatever it is? How do you get out there and help people understand the insurance experience? We'll just call it the insurance experience as an example. So ours is really an experience platform, right?
Yep.
So I do this in demos all the time. I say, I'm an insurance guy. I probably could get the replacement cost on my home, plus or minus 20%, right? Inflationary factors and stuff. I'm not an actuary, so I can't get it spot on. But my neighbor across the street, Mark, he was a battlefield medic. He knows lots of things about medical devices and how to save people's lives. But if he were to go and buy insurance today, insurance carrier is going to ask him, what are we going to insure your house for? That's a huge mistake. There's so much data that is available to give him an insurance experience so he understands how insurance works.
Yeah.
So you put the data in, you put your address in, and he's like, well, what do I use? So I use what I bought my house for, my tax value, which we're all really upset about. Since he's my neighbor, I'm upset about that. Or what the guy down the street just sold his house for.
Right.
He's going to use the lower of those three values, and none of them are accurate. So what we need to do is we need to empower him, put your address in, let's pull that back, and let's say why we're going to use this number as the basis for your insurance. But then you take that to the next level and you say, well, Mr. Cooper, not only are we going to insure your house for this value, but you're in a particular flood zone. You're at a higher risk. So we're happy to sell the house, but based on our underwriting appetite, you don't necessarily say that to him, but you have to have a flood policy to move on. So you have to click this button, and we're going to provide you a flood policy as well to really, round out protection. But the same is true for the agent, right? So I remember when I was an insurance agent, toughest job I've ever had in my life.
I can't even imagine.
I sat down, I had a great sales manager. His name was Bert Shield. And he sits down, I write 100 houses and got 100 customers. I think I'm just, hot stuff.
Yep.
And he does a book review with me. And that was a little bit embarrassing, to be honest with you, but I learned a lot. So he sits down, we look at all these policies, and he takes 3 specific files that he had already prepared, and he brings them to me. And in one case, it was a flood. The guy lived beside a river. I didn't even ask the guy if he needed flood insurance. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So being able to educate someone and empower them to sell properly and to protect people.
Right.
Again, I mentioned Western North Carolina earlier, but these poor people are uninsured.
Yeah.
And maybe we as an industry did them a disservice by not, putting them in a better position to become whole.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what we'll do as a community to band together to build them back up.
It's an opportunity.
Absolutely,
it's an opportunity, and especially at a time where especially in like my state as an example, where the industry is so demonized.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
It's an opportunity for us to kind of step up and figure out, at least what we do different next time.
That's right.
If nothing else,
That's right.
So Josh, talk to me a little bit about your experience as you're in the kind of the no code space, and you're kind of preaching this to prospective clients. What kind of resistance are you running into? Because for me, and I've done my own preaching, my own evangelization about, man, guys, now is the time. And to me, I struggle with trying to understand what the hesitation is. I'm offering you now an opportunity, business, to author your own future, to shed all of the technical constraints of needing. But I feel like oftentimes I'm talking to a wall sometimes. What do you feel like are some of the issues?
I think some of the biggest issues are people are still in the technology mindset.
Yeah.
They have this kind of core system, and I've heard you mention it before. They have a core system approach to running their organization, as opposed to a data-driven approach to running their organization.
Yeah.
With the right data, you can make better decisions.
Right.
You just can. And until we get out of our own ways as an industry and move beyond the core system into a data-focused approach to running our business, to enhancing customer experience, to make the agents' lives better, make the underwriters' lives better, make better risk decisions, like understand your appetite, handle claims more predictively, if you will. I think we're going to be in a cycle of that for a little while until that message really resonates with the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And there's some great core systems, but specifically with our business, some of the resistance we find is, these core systems have done a really good job with the blocking and tackling, right?
Right.
Rates, rules, forms, compliance. They're awesome at that.
Right.
But they look at a view into that core system as a portal.
Right.
This person can see these things.
Right.
And the flows need to go along this very rigid path. They don't have to do that, right? So when I get an opportunity to really highlight what we do as an organization and really just get that out of the way, and say, we're going to sit down with agents, we're going to sit down with claims adjusters, we're going to sit down with you all as policyholders and say, what should this look like? What should this flow look like? What is the journey? How does it look? And just not be beholden to the flow of a core system and more focused on that data and operationalizing that and bringing that to the forefront. It's going to take us a little bit of time. I think we're at a point that table is turning. And you'd asked earlier about no code, low code being overshadowed by AI. Maybe that they work together to change that mentality to a certain degree.
I wonder if there's an opportunity even for the core system guys to say, to your point, rates, rules, and forms. I mean, we kill that. We do that an amazing job at that. Experience layer, not so much. Yeah. Why don't we chop that guy off?
That's right.
Let's expose APIs or whatever so that we can work with the folks that really know experience.
That's right. So I'm pleased to say that there are some vendors that are actually doing that, right?
Yeah.
But again, going back to the people that bought these systems the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's what their expectations are.
Right.
I'm buying a core system, it needs to do everything. And it's weird, like in core systems, because, based on my history selling core systems for years, there was a point where everything needed to be a suite.
Yeah.
Guidewire broke that model. Like, hey, we've got an amazing claims system. And obviously they ended up building a huge enterprise around the core. But they were out there best of breed. We're the best at what we do.
Yep.
And they did a really good job with that. So these core systems started breaking out. Like we're, ABC company policy, ABC company billing, ABC claims. And then that changed again and went back to the core suite. And that's what people really are looking for the most part. But it also has its own challenges, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they have one core suite for commercial lines, they have one core suite for personal lines, and the two don't speak, right? So again, that experience layer, the beauty of it is providing one experience for your agents.
That's right.
So, or your policyholders, right?
That's right.
So I may have my BOP with the same company that I have my personal auto and home with.
That's right.
I don't want two different fonts. I just want my relationship is with the carrier and the agent. So I want that. So until we kind of get out of our own mentality of how that works, but it's in the buyer's head too, right?
Yeah.
It's a core suite, so it should do everything.
Right.
I'm kind of a guy, like, if I'm buying something, I want to drive a particular outcome. As long as these two pieces of technology can work together to drive the outcome that I really want, we'll get there eventually.
There almost also too seems to be this shift, Josh, because you talked about the core suite. I remember as a CIO, I thought to myself, Yeah, I really got to make sure that I've got one throat to choke, and I want this kind of all this thing. I just want to just sign one contract, whole thing, and it was funny. As I kind of continued on with my technical journey, I realized that what I really needed to be really good at is being a good integrator.
That's right.
A good integrator of best of breed. And I think that there's probably a mind shift that has to happen, and maybe it's changing of the guard that we're starting to see, kind of generationally. But it's this mind shift that says, no, I want to go out there and I want to buy the best experience layer, and I'm going to be responsible for wiring it up and making sure that it all works together. I'm still not coding anything from scratch. I won't do that.
That's right.
And then, but where's this opportunity for me to be really my expertise be in bringing everything together? But for your product, though, one of the things that I also thought was kind of interesting is, what does connectivity look like? Because even that, right? I mean, I used to think, I was going to have like API developers working for me, but I think you guys are turning that around too.
Yeah, certainly. It's really interesting. And our chief product officer, just a little bit more about the company. He lives in the UK, and he was implementing a large core system. And it was the one throat to choke mentality, right? So he's out there and he's implementing it, and his responsibility was the agent and policyholder experience.
Right.
And every time he wanted to make a change, call an API and get some data from, another system, they sent him a statement of work for $100,000. And he's like, there's a better way. So he got to thinking, he met, our founders, and he's like, I can do better. I can do better. I can make this where a business user can go in and say, this is not the flow that I want to be. I want this on this screen. I want this data to come from this place, and really truly operationalize that. And they've broken it down to really support both the technology folks as well as the business folks, which I love.
Yeah.
So I'm doing demos, and I'll show people how you can break down the workflows, and you can create an API call out to a system and bring that back in, regardless of what the system is, but also support that from a JSON perspective too, right?
Yeah.
So that technologist feels at home in there as well. Maybe they can do it a little bit faster than somebody that's designing things.
Right.
But he's really done a good job of marrying up the two. But you're right. We're in a time that there's been more data created this year than there ever was in the history of mankind, right?
You got it.
And how do we use that?
Yep.
And you got to make it super simple. One example is I worked with a company one time, and it took us a long time to get a data integration done. And I met with this potential partner who provided like this amazing kind of chat experience, two-way texting, again, just part of that customer experience layer. So I was a little reticent. I was newer to ManageMy, and I said, okay, Mark's gonna look at the documentation, and Mark, by the end of the week, can you let them know about how long it'll take the teams to get done with the integration? He's like, yeah, not a problem. Apparently, the meeting ended a little early, and Mark looked at the documentation, and 12 minutes later I got a text message. Sorry about your claim. I'm like, what? He literally integrated this technology in 12 minutes.
Wow.
With, previous company, it took almost 12 months. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how the process worked.
Yeah.
But using those newer technologies, I think, enables us to be way more agile and provide that agility to the businesses that really need it.
Love it. Love it. Josh, we are at a conference that's based all about innovation and moving the ball forward. What's on the roadmap for you over the next kind of, call it 12 to 18 months? What's in your crystal ball?
Yeah, in my crystal ball, I think, there's a huge focus on ecosystems, right? We talked about it a little bit earlier, right? Yep. We don't want to be all things to all people. We want to be really, really good at what we do. Yep. And then empower the businesses to do that. Yep. So we're looking at a lot of different partnerships across the chasm of technologists, but how do we take what we're doing and also empower other outcomes, right? So is there another vendor out there that really needs that experience layer that they can take, and we can work with them to provide the outcome that the insurance carrier is looking for? I think there's a little less focus on me now, and I'm seeing a lot more technology companies that are providing technology to insurance carriers be really focused on that ecosystem type of approach. Yeah. Had a real good mentor one time, and I helped kind of build a few businesses with him, and it was an approach where you could take little pieces of a core system and BPO services and SI relationships and provide to a carrier what they really needed without having to buy everything. So I think if there's one thing that I'm personally focused on is how do we continue to build that ecosystem? How do we create this experience hub, if you will, right? Across our platform so people can pick and choose. Like, well, I want texting with this, and I want, this credit card processing because they have this amazing, digital experience that, really gets people paid fast. Like, what does that look like? So that's really what my focus is going to be on, is this ecosystem approach.
Got it. Josh, I can't thank you enough, man, for taking the time out of your day, man, to be here.
I'll be anywhere for you, buddy.
I love it, man.
It's awesome.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.